My wealthy aunt left me everything: the house, the money, and the business. But the same parents who walked out of my life 5 years ago suddenly showed up, acting like nothing ever happened. Stay with me, because this story still shocks me whenever I think about it, and I hope by the end you'll understand why I chose the path I did. My name is Ethan Miller, and I'm 24 years old. When I was 19, my parents decided they no longer wanted me around. They said I was a burden, that I was holding them back from the life they dreamed of. I still remember the night they packed their bags, closed the door behind them, and never came back. I stood there, begging them to stay, but they didn't even look back. For a long time, I had no one. Then my Aunt Caroline stepped in. She wasn't just my aunt. She became the mother I never had. She was a strong woman, a successful real estate investor who had built her own empire from nothing. She told me, "Ethan, blood doesn't always mean family. Loyalty does." Those words kept me alive during the darkest nights. She gave me food, shelter, and more importantly, I finally had someone who believed in me. We built a life together. I went to college with her support, and on weekends I helped her with her properties. She taught me everything: how to negotiate, how to manage people, and how to stay humble even when you had more than enough. I felt like I had purpose again. Then one morning, everything changed. Aunt Caroline didn't wake up. I found her still and peaceful in her bed, and my world collapsed all over again. The woman who saved me, who gave me hope when no one else did, was suddenly gone. The days after her passing were a blur. I cried more than I thought I could, but at the same time, I felt this burning determination to honor her. I sat in the lawyer's office, my hands shaking, as he read her will. To my shock, Aunt Caroline had left everything to me: her house, her shares in the company, and over $3 million in inheritance. I didn't feel rich in that moment. I felt broken, because the money couldn't replace her. But I also felt grateful. She trusted me with her legacy, trusted me to carry on the life she built. I promised myself I would not waste it. Just when I thought I could finally find peace, life decided to test me again. At Caroline's funeral, as I stood there grieving the only person who had ever stood by me, I saw 2 familiar faces in the crowd, faces I thought I'd never see again. My parents. They looked at me with fake tears and open arms, as if the past 5 years hadn't happened. My heart froze. After everything, after abandoning me when I needed them most, they had come back. And in that moment, I realized this story was far from over. At Aunt Caroline's funeral, I was standing by her casket, barely holding myself together, when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned around and my stomach dropped. It was them, my parents, Robert and Linda Miller. The people who left me behind like I meant nothing to them, standing there with sad faces and crocodile tears. "Ethan, sweetheart," my mom said, reaching out to hug me. My body froze, but she didn't hesitate. She wrapped her arms around me as if the last 5 years never happened. My dad followed, patting my back with this fake warmth in his voice. "We're so proud of you, son. Look at the man you've become." I stood there stiff, not knowing whether to scream, cry, or push them away. A part of me wanted to believe them. After all, they were still my parents. But another part of me remembered the night they abandoned me. The memory of begging them not to leave burned hot in my chest, and it made their words feel like poison. The funeral ended with people offering condolences, but all I could feel was their presence hovering around me. They didn't leave my side, acting like they belonged there. "We're here for you now," my mom whispered. "Family sticks together." I almost laughed out loud at the irony of it. Family sticks together? They hadn't stuck by me when I needed them most. The real blow came a few days later at the lawyer's office. I sat in a heavy leather chair while Mr. Grant, my aunt's lawyer, unfolded the will. My parents sat across from me, holding hands, their faces already glowing with expectation. I could tell they thought this was their big payday. Mr. Grant cleared his throat and began reading. Caroline Miller leaves her entire estate, including her properties, business shares, and financial assets, to her nephew, Ethan Miller. He went on detailing each item: the house, the company, the accounts. Every word sank deeper into my chest, and I fought back tears as I listened. Caroline had trusted me with everything. She believed in me so much that she left me her life's work. Then came the part that made my parents' faces drop. Robert and Linda Miller are to receive nothing. Silence filled the room. My parents shifted uncomfortably, their hands tightening together. My dad tried to mask his shock with a tight smile, while my mom's eyes darted to me, as if hoping I would object, as if I would offer them something out of pity. But I stayed quiet. Inside, my emotions were warring. I felt grief for my aunt, gratitude for her faith in me, and burning resentment toward the people sitting across from me. They had abandoned me, only to reappear at the exact moment money was involved. Walking out of that office, I realized the truth. They hadn't come back for me. They came back for what I had been given. And that realization made my heart grow colder than ever. After the will was read, my parents' behavior changed overnight. At first, they acted supportive, like they truly wanted to be part of my life again. My mom called me almost every day, checking in with a soft voice, asking if I was eating enough, if I was sleeping well. My dad started showing up at the house, offering to help with little things, fixing a light bulb, carrying boxes, mowing the lawn. To anyone else, it might have looked like loving parents reconnecting with their son. But I knew better. At first, I kept my guard up. I told myself they would eventually show their real intentions. Still, a small part of me wanted to believe in them. I wanted to believe that maybe, after everything, they had changed. For a few weeks, I let them hover around, watching closely. Then the hints began. It started small, over dinner one night. My mom looked around Aunt Caroline's dining room, admiring the furniture. "She built such a beautiful home," she said, before smiling at me. "You're lucky, Ethan. And, family should share everything. That's what keeps people close." I felt a knot in my stomach, but I brushed it off, pretending not to notice. A few days later, my dad leaned against the doorway while I was working at Caroline's desk. He sighed heavily, then said, "Son, your mother and I have been going through some tough times. Bills, debts, life hasn't been easy. But now that we're together again, maybe you could help us out a little. Nothing major, just a small loan." He said the word loan like it was nothing, like handing over a piece of my inheritance would mean less to me than buying groceries. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Their voices echoed in my head. Family should share everything, just a small loan. But my mind dragged me back to the night I was 19. I remembered standing on the porch, rain soaking through my clothes, begging them not to leave. I remembered my dad's cold stare and my mom's silence. I remembered hearing the car door slam and the engine start. I had been left with nothing, no food, no money, no plan. I had slept on a friend's couch for weeks, trying to piece my life together while they went off to start their shiny new life without me. And now, 5 years later, they wanted my help. They wanted money. They didn't come back for me, not for my well-being, not because they suddenly loved me again. They came back because I had something they wanted. The more I thought about it, the more anger built inside me. I clenched my fists until my nails dug into my palm. They had already taken 5 years of my life. I wasn't going to let them take a single dollar more. But instead of showing my anger, I kept my face calm. I let them keep talking, keep pretending, because deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of their game, and I was going to be ready when they showed their true selves. I sat across from Mr. Grant, my aunt's lawyer, in his quiet office downtown. Papers were spread out on the desk between us, documents that spelled out exactly what Aunt Caroline had left me. But my mind wasn't focused on the inheritance. It was on Robert and Linda, my parents, lurking in the background of my new life like shadows I couldn't escape. "Mr. Grant," I said, my voice low, "is there any way they can take this from me? The house, the company, the money, do they have a legal claim?" He adjusted his glasses, leaning forward. "Ethan, listen to me carefully. They abandoned you when you were 19. They gave up custody and provided no financial support for years. In the eyes of the law, they have no rights to Caroline's estate. None. Everything is secured under your name, exactly as she intended." His words should have comforted me, but instead they stirred something heavier inside. Guilt. I leaned back in the chair, rubbing my temples. I know what they did. I know they don't deserve anything. But part of me keeps hearing that voice in my head. Society telling me I should forgive them because they're my parents. That blood should matter. That I should be the bigger person. Mr. Grant shook his head. "Family is more than blood. Caroline proved that to you. Don't let guilt rewrite history." History. That word dragged me back into the past like a weight pulling me underwater. I was 19 again, standing in the driveway under a dark sky. The rain poured down, soaking my clothes until they clung to my skin. My mom stood by the car, refusing to meet my eyes. My dad had one hand on the driver's side door, his face cold and determined. "Please," I begged, my voice breaking. "Don't leave me. I'll do better. I'll work harder. Just don't go." For a moment, I thought my mom would turn around. Her hand twitched on the suitcase handle. But then my dad slammed the car door shut. "You'll survive, Ethan," he said flatly. "We need a new start. You'll figure something out." Then the engine roared to life. I stood in the driveway, shivering, watching the taillights fade into the distance until the darkness swallowed them completely. That was the night everything in me broke. The memory left me shaking in Mr. Grant's office. I clenched my jaw and forced myself back to the present. "They didn't just leave me," I said quietly. "They erased me. And now they want to come back because I have something they need." Mr. Grant studied me carefully. "Then the question is, Ethan, are you going to let them?" I sat in silence, the weight of my choices pressing down on me. Part of me longed for family, for acceptance. But the other part, the stronger part, was fueled by that night in the rain, by the sound of the car driving away, and by the emptiness they left behind. No matter what society said, I knew the truth. Blood didn't excuse betrayal. and I wasn't going to let guilt blind me to that ever again. I told myself I would give them one chance. Maybe it was weakness, maybe it was hope, but a part of me wanted to see if Robert and Linda were capable of being real parents after all this time. So I invited them to dinner at Aunt Caroline's house, the house that was now mine, though I still couldn't get used to saying that. They arrived dressed like they were attending some formal event. My mom wore pearls that looked borrowed, and my dad had on a suit that smelled faintly of whiskey. The moment they stepped inside, their eyes weren't on me, they were on the house. "This place is incredible," my mom said, running her fingers along the edge of an antique cabinet. Caroline had such good taste. "Do you know how much this is worth?" My dad whistled when he walked through the living room. "Solid oak. Must have cost a fortune. And that chandelier, wow. You really lucked out, son." The way he said son made my stomach twist. It didn't sound like love. It sounded like a man admiring a lottery ticket. I tried to focus on dinner. I had cooked something simple, nothing fancy, but they barely touched the food. Their eyes kept drifting around the house, scanning every corner like appraisers at an auction. My mom even asked if she could take a quick look upstairs. I said no, but she went anyway, returning a few minutes later with that fake smile plastered on her face. After dessert, I excused myself to grab something from the garage. As I walked back toward the kitchen, I stopped when I heard their voices. They didn't know I was standing just beyond the doorway listening. "He's young," my dad whispered. "He doesn't know what he's doing. We'll convince him to sign some things over. Tell him it's just for safekeeping. Once the estate's under our name, we can manage everything." My mom laughed softly. "Yes, exactly. We'll make him believe it's for his own good. Poor boy just wants a family. He'll fall for it." The words cut through me sharper than any knife. I stood frozen, my fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palm. Any part of me that still wanted to believe they had changed evaporated in that moment. They didn't come back for me. They didn't love me. They came back because of what I had, because of the house, the land, the business, the money. To them, I wasn't their son. I was just the key to a fortune they thought they deserved. I stepped back quietly before they could see me, my mind racing. At dinner, I forced a smile and pretended I hadn't heard a thing. But inside, I was done. The chance I had given them was over. Whatever thin thread of hope I still carried snapped that night. From then on, I knew exactly what they were, and I knew I would never let them take what my aunt entrusted to me. The next time I saw them, I wore a smile that wasn't real. After overhearing their whispers in the kitchen, I knew exactly what Robert and Linda were after. But instead of confronting them right away, I made a choice. I would play their game. If they thought I was naive, I would let them believe it. So when my mom hugged me at the door, I hugged her back. When my dad clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Glad we're spending more time together, son," I nodded like I meant it. Their eyes lit up, convinced they were making progress. At first, they kept it subtle. My mom would say things like, "It feels so good to sit together as a family again. This house should be filled with love, not loneliness." My dad added, "Caroline would have wanted us all to stick together." It was all carefully wrapped in sentiment, but I could see through it. Every word was bait. Soon, the real plan began to surface. One evening after dinner, my dad leaned forward with that rehearsed smile of his. "Ethan, your mother and I have been talking. We've been considering starting a new family business. Something small at first, maybe real estate, since that's what Caroline was into. With your inheritance, we could invest together. Keep it in the family." I raised an eyebrow, feigning curiosity. "A business?" "Yes," my mom chimed in quickly. "You wouldn't have to do anything stressful. Just support us and we'll handle the details. Think of it as building a future for all of us. Isn't that what families do?" I sipped my drink slowly, hiding the smirk threatening to form. They were growing bold, too confident in the act I was putting on. Over the next week, they kept pressing. My mom would guilt-trip me, her voice trembling as she said, "We lost so many years with you. Don't push us away again. We're your parents. Don't you want us back in your life?" My dad played the tougher angle. "You're young. Money like this can slip through your fingers if you're not careful. We're just trying to protect you from mistakes. Trust us." Every time, I nodded, acting like their words were sinking in. I let them think they were winning me over. In reality, I was studying them, every expression, every lie, every manipulation. At night, I sat at Caroline's old desk, planning quietly. I called Mr. Grant and had him tighten protections on my assets. I reviewed documents, locked down accounts, and made sure nothing could move without my approval. The more they pushed, the more determined I became to turn their scheme back on them. To their faces, I was the forgiving son they wanted. But behind that mask, I was preparing for the moment I would expose them for exactly what they were. They thought they were playing me, but soon, they'd learn I was the one writing the rules of this game. The moment I decided to stop playing defense and take control, everything became clearer. If Robert and Linda wanted to test me, I was going to show them that I wasn't the helpless 19-year-old they had abandoned. I was stronger now, and I had the resources to protect myself. My first step was calling Mr. Grant. We met late in his office, papers stacked high on the desk. They're circling me like vultures, I told him. I need to make sure they can't get their hands on a single dollar. He nodded calmly. We'll put your assets into a trust. Transfer the titles of the properties into your name alone, secure the bank accounts, and place legal protections on everything. Even if they try to sue, they won't have a chance. For hours, we went over every detail. Signatures, transfers, locks, and safes. Each paper I signed felt like another wall between me and the people who had tried to erase me. By the time we finished, I knew Aunt Caroline's legacy was untouchable. But I wasn't finished yet. Protecting myself was only part of the plan. I wanted proof of who they really were. Proof that no one could deny. So, I set the bait. I invited Robert and Linda to the house one evening, telling them I had some paperwork I wasn't sure about. I said I thought it might make sense to transfer certain parts of the estate to them, since I was too young to handle it all. Their eyes lit up instantly. My dad tried to play it cool, but I caught the grin he exchanged with my mom. When they arrived, I laid out a few blank folders on the dining table, pretending they were legal documents. Mr. Grant says these could help take some pressure off me, I explained, trying to sound unsure. Maybe you two could take over certain responsibilities. I just don't want to mess things up. My mom reached across the table, squeezing my hand with fake warmth. Oh, sweetheart, you don't have to worry. We'll take care of everything. That's what parents are for. My dad couldn't hide his excitement. He chuckled, shaking his head. Finally, we'll be back on top. This family deserves to be where it belongs. Trust me, son, this is the smart move. I kept my face neutral, but inside anger boiled. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. And all the while, my phone sat tucked in my jacket pocket, recording every word. I let the conversation drag on, asking them leading questions, watching them expose themselves piece by piece. By the time they left that night, I had exactly what I needed. Evidence of their greed, their manipulation, their obsession with money over me. As I closed the door behind them, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. For once, I wasn't the abandoned son begging for scraps of love. I was the one holding all the power. And soon, they would find out just how badly they had underestimated. The meeting was set in the same polished conference room where Ethan had handled most of his aunt's estate matters. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the glossy table. Robert and Linda sat across from him, trying to hide their excitement. They thought today would be the day Ethan finally handed everything over. Ethan sat calmly, a folder in front of him. His lawyer was discreetly present, watching but silent. Thank you for coming, Ethan began, his tone measured. I've thought a lot about what you asked, the family business, the investments, the second chance. Linda leaned forward eagerly, her eyes shining. We knew you'd see reason, Ethan. You're our son, and family belongs together. Robert added, puffing out his chest. This is how it should have always been. Together, running everything as a family. Ethan's lips curved into something that looked like a smile, but his eyes stayed cold. Before I make any decisions, I want to clear the air. I've done some reflecting. He slid the folder across the table and opened it, revealing neatly stacked documents and a small recorder. Robert frowned. What's this? Ethan pressed play. Their own voices filled the room. The recording of their previous meeting where they spoke freely of Ethan's wealth, laughing about finally being back on top, and manipulating him with lines about owing them. Linda's face went pale. Ethan, you misunderstood. But Ethan cut her off sharply. No, I understood perfectly. You didn't come back for me. You came back for the money. His voice trembled with both fury and pain. For 5 years, I begged for your love, your presence, your guidance. You left me with nothing but silence. My aunt picked up the pieces you abandoned. And now that she's gone, you think you can stroll back into my life and take what she left me. Robert slammed his hand on the table. We're your parents. We deserve it. That money should have been ours to begin with. His voice was loud, entitled, echoing against the walls. Ethan stood, his jaw tight, his eyes locked on them. Parents? You stopped being my parents the day you walked away. You left me like I was nothing, like I didn't matter. Don't you dare use that word now to justify your greed. Linda tried to reach across the table, tears streaming down her face. Ethan, we made mistakes. Don't punish us like this. We just want to be a family again. Ethan's laugh was bitter, hollow. A family? Families don't return only when there's money on the table. Families don't abandon their child and then try to claim him once he's successful. He gathered the papers back into the folder, his voice steady now. I have all the proof I need. And after today, you won't get a single cent from me. The room fell into silence. For the first time, Robert and Linda realized they hadn't just lost the money. They had lost their son forever. Robert's hands trembled with rage as he leaned across the table, his voice dripping with venom. You think you can humiliate us, Ethan? You think this little act of rebellion means anything? We can sue you. We'll drag you through court until you're drained of every dollar that woman left you." His jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing with a dangerous glint. "And if that doesn't work, we'll make sure every investor, every associate, knows you're ungrateful. We'll ruin you." Linda, sitting beside him, smirked bitterly, her tone sharp as glass. "Do you know how quickly reputations collapse, Ethan? All it takes is one whisper in the right ear. You may have money now, but money doesn't buy respect. We'll remind everyone who raised you, who gave you life. You owe us, whether you admit it or not." Ethan sat still, calm as if he'd been waiting for this exact performance. He didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, folded his arms, and let a thin smile curve across his lip. "Is that so?" he asked softly, his voice steady. "Because from where I'm sitting, you don't have a single card left to play." Robert slammed his palm on the table, making the papers rattle. "Don't you dare talk to me like that. You're nothing without us. That money, that house, all of it, it should have been ours. Your aunt poisoned you against us." Ethan leaned forward, his eyes locking on his father's. "No," he said firmly. "You poisoned yourselves the day you walked out. The day you decided I wasn't worth the burden." He paused, his voice lowering but carrying an edge sharp enough to cut. "And now you've come crawling back, not for love, not for forgiveness, but for money. That's all I've ever been to you, a paycheck waiting to happen." Linda opened her mouth to fire back, but Ethan reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone. With one swift tap, their own voices filled the room, greedy, selfish, undeniable. "Finally, we'll be back on top. This money should have been ours all along. Ethan owes us everything." The words echoed like a verdict being read. Robert's face drained of color, while Linda's smugness collapsed into wide-eyed horror. Ethan let the recording play to the end, then looked at them coldly. "I was patient enough to give you a chance to be honest. Instead, you handed me proof of exactly what you are." He slid the phone across the table toward them. "So here's how this goes. If you try to sue me, if you so much as whisper a threat, this recording goes public. Every old friend, every business partner, every single person who once respected you, they'll all know the truth. You'll be remembered not as parents, but as parasites." Robert's fists clenched, his lips twitching with silent fury, but no words came. Linda looked away, her eyes glistening, not with remorse but with the bitter sting of defeat. Ethan rose from his chair, straightening his jacket with a quiet authority. "You've already lost me," he said, his tone final. "Now you've lost everything else, too." And with that, he walked out, leaving Robert and Linda in the ruins of their own greed. Ethan stood in the silence of the office, the weight of everything pressing down like a storm that had finally broken. His parents' voices still echoed in his ears, their hollow apologies, their threats, their greed. For years, he had longed for answers, for closure, maybe even for a chance at reconciliation. But now, staring at the two people who had once been his entire world, he knew the truth. Some wounds never heal, and some betrayals can never be undone. He looked at Robert and Linda, their faces tight with anger and desperation. "This is the last time," he said, his voice steady, almost calm. "You left me when I was a child, with nothing and no one. Now I return the favor. You don't get to come back into my life, not after everything." Linda tried to plead, her voice trembling. "Ethan, we're family. We made mistakes, but we can fix this." Ethan shook his head slowly. "Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by loyalty, love, and sacrifice. Aunt Caroline showed me that when you couldn't. She gave me a home, guidance, and hope when I needed it most. You," he paused, his jaw tightening, "you gave me abandonment." Robert's eyes flashed with fury, but there was nothing left for him to say. For the first time, Ethan saw them not as parents, but as strangers, strangers who had come to take what they never earned. With finality, Ethan opened the door. "Leave, and don't come back. Not tomorrow, not years from now. You don't exist in my life anymore." The sound of the door closing behind them was more than meeting would. It was the ending of a chapter that had haunted him for years. The anger in his chest didn't vanish, but it shifted into something sharper, stronger, resolve. Days later, Ethan stood at Aunt Caroline's graveside, flowers in his hand. The sky was a deep orange, the sun sinking low as if bowing to the memory of the woman who had saved him. "I kept my promise," he whispered. "They'll never take from me what you gave. And I'll make sure your legacy lives on." He poured his energy into her real estate business, but not just for profit. He started outreach programs, creating safe housing for foster kids and young adults who had nowhere to turn. Each project was more than business. It was healing, a way of giving others what he once desperately needed. Ethan didn't forgive Robert and Linda. He didn't need to. Forgiveness wasn't for them. It was for people who deserved it. Instead, he found strength in building his own life, in proving that betrayal didn't define him, resilience did. As he looked at the city skyline one evening, the words came to him, heavy with truth and satisfaction. "They left me for nothing, but in the end, I left them with nothing too." Do you believe Ethan made the right choice by shutting his parents out for good, or should he have given them one last chance? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy dramatic stories like this, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next one.